This is important. This is about Sarah Kellen. For those of you who may or may not remember, she's the woman in the Bill Clinton photos, okay? In the big Bill Clinton pool photo that got released right here, right in the jacuzzi, okay? This redacted person is Sarah Kellen. She is a person that should not be redacted. She was one of Epstein's recruiters. She was one of his lieutenant. He had 4 of them. He had 4 primary women. There was Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. She was like number 1. And then there were 4 women underneath him. There was Sarah Kellen. There was Lesley Groff. There was Adriana Ross and Nadia Marcinkova. Now, what happened is when Jeffrey Epstein got out of those charges in Florida, the federal charges that 𝗙𝗚𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Trump's labor secretary, negotiated this deal. It gave Epstein immunity and it gave those 4 women immunity for life. So they just walked, okay? His top lieutenants who knew the entire operation, the women who ran it, they all got immunity for life. And they gave nothing. They gave no information. The whole thing was like, wow, you just gave all of the people that committed this heinous crime, you gave them all no possibility of ever being charged. And they just disappeared into the woodwork. At least one scheduled massages with minors that turned into SA. Okay, another put them on planes to his properties in the US. They were all named and given immunity in the infamous plea deal when they dropped a 60-count indictment that allowed him to plead guilty to 2 state prostitution charges. This is one of them. Sarah Kellen Vickers, there she is. Okay, Sarah Kellen, she's married to this race car driver. Again, they're getting divorced. But this is Sarah Kellen. This is the woman from the Clinton picture. Okay, that's her. This is Sarah Kellen in the Clinton picture. She scheduled most of the appointments at his Palm Beach mansion. She also paid the girls who came to the house $200 to $300 a pop. Several witnesses called her out by name in Ghislaine Maxwell's trial. She's never been charged. She's been named in several civil suits as a defendant. She started work in 2002 at his Manhattan mansion and in Palm Beach. It was nearing the end of Maxwell's role procuring girls, okay? And Carolyn Adriano testified at Maxwell's trials that Vickers took naked photos of her before an appointment that turned into SA, that she was paid. And look at this, that survivor, Carolyn Adriano, was found dead of an accidental overdose in 2023. You like how that works, guys? Right? Somebody testifies against Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Testifies against Sarah Kellen, outs some of this shit, and then accidental overdose happens. Like, shocker. Okay. So now, see, I don't like how they're using her name Vickers. This is bothersome to me. Okay. Because her name is Sarah Kellen. And I don't care if she took the fucking last name Vickers. She's getting a divorce. The people writing this are kind of like obfuscating in a way. They should just use Kellen. But Kellen has described herself as a victim who was raped and abused weekly. But again, though, guys, I understand that, like, okay, you say you're a victim. Here's my philosophy. Can I go in on this? Because I'm not entirely sure that Sarah Kellen was a victim because she met Jeffrey at age 22. And from all the research I can find, she seemed to go right into procuring girls. But I think it's a real simple equation. If you were abused by Epstein, and if you're saying you were a victim, you ended up becoming a recruiter to save yourself, I get that. There are other women who did that, right? Like Robson, Haley Robson comes to mind, right? But the thing about this is then you got to tell, okay? If you were victimized and you became a part of the system because you were victimized, you spill, okay? That's what you do. If you were a victim of this thing, then you give up Epstein. You give up everybody else. But what Sarah Kellen's done is she got immunity She's been named as an abuser. She says, oh, I was a victim, but she's never spilled. She's never said anything, okay? She's been silent and has never testified, has never given up any of the operation, like nothing, okay? And that's fishy, guys, okay? You don't get to say you were a victim and you're taking this immunity deal and then you don't tell us about the operation. If you want the immunity and if you want to be you want to be absolved of your crimes because you were victimized too, then you have to give us everything, and that's a real problem. She scheduled appointments with many of the victims in Palm Beach, up to 3 a day. Okay, today she's married to NASCAR champion Brian Vickers. He filed for divorce. Okay, they have a $6 million home they're selling, yada, yada, yada. Now, here's the other one, which is Nadia Marcinkova, also known as Nadia Marcinko. Epstein bragged about buying model Nadia Marcinkova from her family as a 15-year-old and called her Slovakian sex slave, according to Palm Beach police records. Okay, her lawyers told CNN that she has been severely traumatized as an Epstein victim, and the records indicate that she had sex with the victims as well. Okay, so Nadia Marcinkova was involved in threesomes with the girls. Again, okay, if you were victimized by him, if you were raped and essayed and you participated in this to like save yourself, I get it, right? But then you should be spilling. But you shouldn't be able to claim you were a victim and be absolved of your crimes while simultaneously not giving up everything you know on the thing. That's where it gets suspicious, because normally if you get that immunity and you were a victim, it's like 𝗦𝗂𝗽𝗍𝗍, okay? In the Charles Manson crimes, one of the family members was 𝗦𝗂𝗽𝗍𝗍. She drove the car. She didn't go into the Tate mansion. She didn't go into the LaBianca house. She didn't actually kill anybody. She drove the people, right? But she got immunity and she testified against the family. She gave up everybody, okay? That was the deal. She got immunity. She didn't go to prison, but she gave them all the information. So they were able to prosecute everyone. These women have not. They're holding his secrets. And that means they're not a victim anymore. If they're holding his secrets, they're now being a protector. But so she said she was severely traumatized. Look at this, though. You ready? Look at this. She signed the visitation sheet 67 times. Epstein was incarcerated for 13 months, and Nadia Marcinkova visited him 67 times, guys. Which means she's like covering tracks, okay? She is working for the guy. Jesus. She was still living at his home on Embrio Way in 2010 when she was cited for failure to yield to an emergency vehicle, okay? He put her on his visitors list. The only physical contact was a hug and handshake, blah, blah, blah. She got her pilot's license in 2012. She had started a like some type of airline company for a while. She was living at a building for a long time run by Mark Epstein, Epstein's brother. She's featured on the website of her company, Avaloop, which does branding and marketing for aviation firms, and she changed her name from Marcinkova to Marcinko. Okay, now Lesley Groff is, look at this, she's 58, guys. Lesley Groff is 58. All right, she was his executive assistant for 20 years in New York. One survivor who testified in the Maxwell trial under the pseudonym Kate said Groff booked her flights to Epstein's properties in New York, Palm Beach, New Mexico, the Virgin Islands. And Groff worked for Epstein in the 90s, which means Groff was working for Epstein at the same time Trump was heavily involved. Because remember, guys, Trump was like a 90s guy, okay? Epstein essentially had two chapters. He had the 90s chapter and the 2000s chapter, okay? So the 90s chapter was him and you know, Ehud Barak and politicians and Donald Trump having parties and Bill Clinton, they were partying at Mar-a-Lago, they were partying, you know, in New York City. It was around the fashion world. You know, Jean-Luc Brunel and Epstein were starting their modeling company at the end of the 90s. But 90s was all modeling company and partying and sex. Now, in the 2000s, Trump got more serious about Mar-a-Lago and being the Palm Beach, you know, whatever, royalty. Epstein went crazy on his sex fiend nature with the young Palm Beach girls. So there was a little bit of a split there. Epstein kind of like his addictions got the better of him in the 2000s. The modeling industry sort of started to fade. And that's what I really find interesting, guys, is if you look at Epstein's like daily massages, and if you look at Epstein's like Virginia Giuffre and taking women out of the spa at Mar-a-Lago, all of that happened after the modeling agencies. Like once Trump ended Trump models, and once the modeling agencies of the 80s and 90s stopped becoming the main thing, Epstein sort of went off in this other direction, which makes me wonder if before that it was less. I kind of think, guys, I have a feeling if we were to dig through this, it was Trump that initially provided Epstein with all the underage girls, right? I think Trump was the provider and the trafficker and the person who brought these girls that did party favors. And then when Trump shut down his modeling agency, Epstein took it to like the streets of Palm Beach. And he and Jean-Luc Brunel then got together and formed MC2, and they tried to do their own modeling thing, but it was easier to just pick up the girls in Palm Beach, like off the streets and shit. I literally think that Trump was the trafficker of the two, and that Epstein like went off on his own, and that's how he ended up getting busted, is taking it out of the modeling world, you know? So that's kind of what I think. So Groff, okay, she worked for Epstein for 20 years. Her attorney says she never witnessed anything improper. Groff's job included making appointments for Epstein, okay, taking his messages, setting up high-level meetings with CEOs, business executives, politicians, etc. Okay, in a lawsuit filed in 2021 but later dropped, Jane Doe claimed that in some of these ways, Groff facilitated his abuse. She claimed that Epstein, this Jane Doe said he trafficked her from 2017 right up until he got arrested. So there was a Jane Doe that filed a lawsuit that said Epstein was still trafficking even in the years that he got busted, bro. And you know what's funny, though? I think that's wordplay, because I think it's true. I think Groff never did see anything improper, because I think Groff probably kept herself in the office and just never witnessed any of the shit. She knew about it. The quote doesn't say we know for a fact that Jeffrey Epstein never did anything, or we don't know anything about him being improper. You notice the language. The language is she never witnessed anything, right? She never witnessed it. Okay, but she just never went, right? I mean, if you make a massage appointment and you don't go into the room, you're not witnessing it, okay? It's the wordplay they use, okay? They're very careful with their wordplay, always, around these things. So they're not lying, but they're also not telling the truth. She said Groff paid her after the abuse. Doe and Groff dismissed the lawsuit after Maxwell was found guilty. Okay, 2 other survivors filed suit against Groff, but the litigation was dropped after they got compensated by the Epstein Fund. Now, this is another thing, though. They set up a like hundreds of millions of dollar fund with the estate that if you were abused by him, you can go to the fund, you can file a claim, they pay you a bunch of money, but then you have to drop everything. So your choice is you can get a payout and you can get some compensation for your suffering, which they all deserve. But then as soon as they do it, they have to be quiet about it, and they can't sue anybody again, right? You have to agree to not sue anybody after that. So it's like you're one and done. I mean, you get forced into a situation that is understandable. I would take the money, you know, in most instances, especially when it's women saying they were abused by some powerful man. No one's going to believe them anyway, right? I mean, look at the people still fighting Epstein. It's 30 years later, bro. And they're still, right? Maria Farmer's been fighting this fight for 29 years, boss. In a 2005 New York Times story, Epstein described 3 of his executive assistants as a social prosthesis, making them indispensable to his success as a businessman. They're extensions of my brain, said Epstein. Their intuition is something that I don't have. When Groff became pregnant in 2004, he bought her a Mercedes-Benz, agreed to pay for a full-time nanny so she could keep working for him. There's no way I could lose Lesley to motherhood, Epstein told the Times. Dude, he was starting to do interviews pretty frequently before it all fell apart. Here's the last line, dude. All right. This is Adriana Ross. Now, Adriana Ross, guys, I think I can't be certain about this, but I think Adriana Ross might be in some of those Trump photos that are redacted. But so Adriana Ross, she did some of the most damage to this case of any of these 4 lieutenants. And in particular, guys, he got tipped off, okay? Like I said, the Palm Beach investigation started with the stepmother of a girl who was abused, who called in, said, my daughter got in trouble at school. She had $300 in her purse. And I've heard them talking about this rich guy. I think my stepdaughter has been having sex with a rich guy in Palm Beach and getting paid for it. And the cops, it took them a while to get the girl to speak up. They found other girls. They interviewed 40 girls. They found out it was Epstein. They went through his trash and started collecting evidence for like a year. Then eventually they had enough evidence to get a search warrant. They served a search warrant to his El Brillo Way mansion. But you know what happened? Adriana Ross happened, okay? When they got there, computers were already gone and hard drives and shit were gone. There were just plugs, like empty plugs sitting on tops of desks because somebody tipped off Epstein that he was about to get raided, and Adriana Ross arranged for the computers to be removed. So when they originally went in, they, like half of the computers or something, a significant portion of the computers and hard drives and all that shit, the surveillance footage, it was all gone. Poof. Nobody knows what happened to it. Nobody knows what was on it. Nobody knows where it went. And then she ended up getting immunity. Adriana Ross was a Polish model. Okay, she's been the most silent, named in the non-prosecution. She took a job at his mansion at age 19. Okay, asked Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton during civil litigation. She invoked her 5th. She's reportedly living in Miami. They didn't even mention it, dude. What is this article, bro? Dude, this article is fucking pissing me off, boss. So look at this one right here. This is from 2019, and here it is, Adriana Ross. In 2005, Ross removed 3 computers from his home when the Palm Beach police were investigating him with the belief that his computers contained CSAM. So Adriana Ross, she moved the computers, guys. She took the 5th. She never said anything. She was involved in removing the computers. Here was her in her heyday. Okay, she was like very close to Epstein. She cleared 3 computers from his home before police raided it. And then when they asked her about it, she took the 5th, gone. So that was like half the computers at the house. The police come in the raid and there's just cables sitting on desks. Bro. But yeah, man. So those 4 women though, they hold the key. I mean, I think at some point that original immunity deal needs to be voided. They need to be put on blast because they should have never been given that deal. They didn't give anything, guys. You don't get a deal like that. Like, the only way you get immunity is by testifying. There has never been a fucking trial ever where like people in the system have been given immunity for the crimes, but not required to testify. It doesn't work like that. You don't get immunity for saying nothing, for taking the fifth, boss. Like, come on, bro. What is up, guys? Thank you so much for watching. You like the video, you want to support independent resistance media, you know what to do. Drop that sub, hit the like button, and please share it. And we do love our members, so if you want to become a member, it's another really great way to support. Thanks again for everything, guys. I'll see you next time. Let's go.